Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition of our Digital Dialogue series. This afternoon, I'm joined by Rob Papworth, Operations Director for MB92 La Ciotat. Hi, Rob, how's it going?
Good, thank you, Will. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to see you again. It's been a long time.
It has been a long time, and Rob, as you know, you're one of my favourite people in the industry, and I think not just because we get on over a beer, but because I think under your laid back exterior, you're one of the most astute and sharpest market commentators I think there is, and we've obviously collaborated on a number of events in the past, and it has been a while, but it's good to catch up.
Thanks.
So how have things been?
Yeah, I mean, obviously 2020 has dominated the sort of discussions in the office. There was unique challenges around the sort of health and safety aspect and stuff, and sort of March to April for us was a period of adjustment. But apart from that, you know, if we look at our year, we had a very normal year, apart from that sort of 3-month period when the initial uncertainty kicked in. We've been fortunate that since the end of last year and through to now, it's been fantastic, really. We've been very lucky that we've got lots of clients, lots of demand, and it's been going extremely well.
So yeah, I think that's an important point to touch on, because inevitably every road seems to lead to COVID at the moment, and that's probably the sort of context of which we have to frame any conversation at the moment. But as you say, the flip side of the whole initial sort of developments, I guess, back in the spring of 2020 was that after the most stringent lockdown was lifted, that there seemed to be quite a strong and robust return to activity. Is that what you were seeing on the ground?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's two things, I think, from our point of view. In a crisis, to us, it always feels like our clients become more prudent, or even more importantly, people that aren't our clients, due diligence is much stronger, and people, clients, owners, seem to take longer about their decision-making process, and we get the impression that they're much more thorough. And obviously our hope is that owners are making good choices, and hopefully we'll be in there somewhere again amongst those good choices. On top of that, for sure, this whole idea of a yacht being a safe haven, and, you know, with the limited potential travel options, and, you know, if you get stuck in your villa and the restaurants aren't open around you, and those things that, you know, we can see from the brokerage numbers from last year, that's really been a strong feature. And, you know, for us in refit, if there's a strong new build or brokerage demand, generally it's mirrored in refit.
So yeah, and I can completely see. I mean, the sort of buying secondhand and actually overseeing your own major refit project is a model that's obviously gathered traction in recent years, and I'm sure is something you've seen as a major refitter yourself. But in terms of a lot of people speculated over the new build sector and the fact that we'd have all this force majeure enactments and contractual clauses and so on. Were you seeing any of that in the refit sector? Because in the new build sector, it never really came to pass.
No, I don't, and it didn't happen at all. I mean, certainly not here, and we never. I think maybe it might have come up in a conversation sometimes in a moment of frustration, but it never went to more than that. I think we had around 20 projects on at the time, and there was never a single letter from a lawyer or any discussion about that kind of thing. It was quite exceptional in the sort of worldwide nature of the event, and it wasn't like you could cancel your contract and take the boat out of the yard and go off to a different country and do the works there, because it was a worldwide shutdown. Of course, everybody in the world was having to adjust to it. Even people that were doing well and profiting from certain part of the delivery services and people like that, they were in themselves busy with expansion, and those people that were busy with the changes in a negative way, they were also busy. So I think the yacht became less of a focus for that short period of 3 months, and it was leading into a summer season of uncertainty, and the yacht didn't have that much importance, and there was certainly some owners that didn't use their yachts at all last summer.
So do you think the converse of this whole pandemic situation is that actually it's almost triggered a sort of maybe even an upturn in refit market activity, and crucially, because I know it's one of the big bugbears of the refit sector, better forward planning on the part of the clients? Greater forward planning, shall I say, rather than better. Better's a strong word, but maybe slightly more prudence and slightly longer schedules.
I think I'm not sure about that. I think that any owner, whether it's a yacht or a house or anything, has got the right to decide at a certain point that I want something, or during the summer, if somebody has on their new family with their grandkids and decides that they need one more cabin for their grandkids for next season, then it's occurred, and I think that it's perfectly within his right to say, I want a new cabin put in this season. I think it's unfair to say, well, sorry for planning, and and I think that, I know it's a common complaint, but it's a bit idealistic, I think. And whilst it would be nice, we certainly see it that it's part of our challenge to meet those requests. And we've got a large contract in the yard now on a boat over 70 meters for an extension, and the boat arrived and the designs weren't even finished, and that's our life, and that's what we have to deal with. So yeah. I'm not pinning hopes on change, or I really feel it's our job to adjust to our clients and not the other way around.
That's actually quite a sort of refreshing, I guess, and unique take on it. I mean, obviously, as you know, I've been harassing you for years for quotes and comments on refit best practice, and
trying to get me in trouble normally.
Yeah, sometimes. But I mean, are there any things that do frustrate you about the current process that, or you think that we should all be working towards to improve? I'm talking about as us as a collective, the industry.
Well, I think that it's very similar to new build, in that as an established player, you obviously hope that experience counts to something, the size of your team counts to something, the number of projects you've done counts for something. And sometimes we lose projects to places that I haven't even heard of, and you just think, wow, how is that possible, that somebody's going to spend millions of euros, and the risk assessment, whether that's safety or financial or warranty, that people can do that. I'm not saying that it's necessarily doomed, and of course, depending on the type of project, you could always roll the dice and maybe you save a bit of money, and but in these kind of times, it's definitely, we see a bit of race to the bottom from people panicking, and there's a lot of price dropping, which is frustrating, because for us the price hasn't changed. With the difficulties in travel at the moment, sometimes there's some slight price increases, but I mean, it's very small. But I think it's more, if I was to say something about the press, that of course you can't stop people advertising, but it's quite hard sometimes when you see a magazine full of adverts for a company that seems quite empty shell, let's say.
So yeah, you'd recommend substance over style then?
Well, I hope that we could offer some style as well as substance, but yeah, a little bit more than how glossy the advert is and what the bottom number is.
So you mentioned earlier the impact of inevitably that an upturn in brokerage figures does for the refit market. Now, it, quantifying, because we obviously as market commentators we try to quantify the size and scope of the refit market on a daily basis. And I might get in trouble for saying it's not always a perfect science. One man's refit is not always another, but what we do see within both our data, our forecasting, but also our anecdotal evidence is that the refit sector is one that's going through a significant upturn, and be that a prolonged upturn, but we're seeing greater activity. Do you think the sort of talk on the dock of unprecedented growth in the number of significant major refits is reflected in the realities of the sector?
I think there's a little bit of inevitability about that as the fleet grows, as the strong new build yards become increasingly full. Then it's an option for people to do bigger refits on their boat. For sure, in the last 10 years, the image of refitting has improved. When your portfolio of extensions and things, you've got a decent portfolio to show your clients, then you're almost selling the concept of a refit as well as your yard. So it's definitely an option there that for people that is somewhat as a result of the success of new build. Have we seen it? Yes, at the moment we are seeing it, but we find that our work is very cyclic, from one year having several extensions or mechanical works to the next year having lots of interior rebuilds. And I don't think we can predict what's going to be the trend of next year. At the moment, we've got two very large extension projects on boats over 70 meters. We've got three very large interior refits on boats in the 40 to 50 meter range. I wouldn't say that was a trend. We're just happy that we've got 5 very large refits going on at the same time, as well as the more standard repair, maintenance, class survey work.
So the sort of repair maintenance stuff remains the bread and butter, and the major refit work is still sort of somewhat anomalous, I guess.
I think it depends on the shipyard. One often leads to the other. Obviously, if you're doing an extension, you'll end up probably painting the whole boat. And is that the major refit, or is that part of repair and maintenance? I'm not, it's a grey line. For us, it's probably 30% or something on the major refits, which is a comfortable number for us. I mean, when I say repair and maintenance, in that 70%, I'm including things like paint jobs and special surveys. So it's not,
So does the level of competition within this sector, is it a cause for celebration or a cause for concern for the MB92 Group? Because what we're sort of seeing is a significant number of entrants into the market. The Mediterranean in particular is an incredibly crowded and competitive space, and new facilities seem to be popping up on a regular basis. Is that cause for concern? Because you mentioned obviously the race to the bottom, and whether that necessarily impacts the level of quality for the end user.
No, I mean we always welcome competition, and I think that it's it's extremely important to evolve every year. And our list of things for the year or important changes is probably 100 points of where we really identify that we can change. Last year we split out our sector under 300 tons because we felt that our project management and model was suited in the more 50 to 150 meters, and that vessels where you're not dealing with a manager and you're dealing with captains direct were a slightly different sort of small yard model. So although it's all inside our organization here, we decided to split it out, and it's just an evolution of how our business is. But there's improvements to make everywhere, and every time we do a major refit, we're making slight tweaks. We're choosing different, we've got a team of 30 project managers, and we're trying to match each project manager to the technicality of the project, to the people involved in the project, maybe to the type of vessel, or if they've worked on lots of vessels from a certain shipyard, and even down to the project management methodology. There's a lot of talk in agile project management and these kind of things. Agile project management is very well suited to shorter, more, let's say, disorganized projects, whereas a longer term, more of a rebuild type refit is more standard. And it's our job to adjust to all of the different projects we have and treat them individually. And that's what we're trying to do, is to evolve each different avenue to improve it.
So on the topic of competition, I feel it's a real hot topic in the industry at the moment. It can't escape anyone's attention that the big new build yards they've always refitted their own boats. Boats have always gone back to the yard of origin for work. Everybody knows that, but it's a very sort of recent development that refit divisions in new build shipyards have become a lot more prominent. Marketing budgets have been allocated to the fact that new build shipyards do refits. So with the big boats and the fact that they do have their yards of origin as an option now, and as an option that's heavily marketed by the builders, is that a concern for a refit specialist such as the MB92 Group?
No, I think again it's quite the opposite, in that, for starters, I think the development of new build and the investments that most of the larger or well-known shipyards have made are quite niche. They're a single slot, a single shed, and they're really aiming for these 9-figure refits that exist now and have been done in some of the new build yards. And between them, there's quite heavy competition. And when you've seen vessels from one yard going for a huge refit at one of the other yards, it's definitely caused some ripples within their management teams. And I think what you've seen is a response to that it's not a comfortable situation to see your 100 meter going to your competitor's yard for a large refit. And I think that's the primary concern. Of course, there's client retention and all of those things, but it's really a single or 2 or 3 project model, whereby they're trying to choose either to retain good client continuity, or a prime refit. I don't think that we're concerned about them entering as a viable repair, maintenance and refit yard. This is a rebuild option. And on top of that, we're bidding regularly now against those guys, and it's fantastic to have serious players competing against you. That's what we want. It's exactly what I was talking about earlier, that we want to bid against people that are giving a quality product, that the contractors they're proposing are the right ones, and that you're talking like for like, and that's what we want to be compared against. So for us, the more that they enter into the market, I think the better. But yeah.
And I suppose there are a number of other factors, practical factors that play a role as well. Proximity to the cruising grounds being one.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're stopping for 2 months, it's hard to go up to Northern Europe. I don't think that that's particularly practical, and that is a little bit the issue. But that's why I think you've seen them develop single slots, because they're not trying to push. You know, for us, our client continuity is one of our key factors, and we want that a boat comes in the spring, in the autumn, and the next year he comes for the, you know, over the winter and the year after, and that's what we want to do. And to do that, you have to have a number of different facilities. You have to have a, you know, nice berth. You have to be able to haul a boat out for a short period. You have to put it somewhere for a long period, and you've got all of that flexibility to deal with that. But that's a reality from our location. They're not, the Northern European yards are not trying to compete in that model. So yeah.
This a little bit of a left field question. You may not have a strong opinion on it either way, but a lot of people, whenever we get together at the Super Yacht Forum, there are lots of parties who sort of proffer alternative business models that may prove more attractive to the clients of the future, and a lot of the common themes seem to be away from commissioning new projects and for actually restoring and maintaining the existing fleet, a sort of more utilitarian approach to yacht ownership, or to yacht operation, I should say. What are your thoughts on the assertion that the refit sector could become the industry's blue ribboned market in years to come?
I think, you know, if you read a magazine, or am I number 22 on the interview list, you realize that repair refit is quite far from the top of anyone's list. It's a bit like servicing your Ferrari. It's not what you go and talk to your mates about, is it? Saying, I just took my car down the garage to have it serviced. I mean, I can't really see that as the case. I mean, for the rebuild and refit thing, possibly. Honestly, I think the new build is in a great place at the moment, and you know, with the big drive towards sustainable methods, powering, these kind of things, I think that it will almost be the opposite, that the focus on the potential to build a new yacht with new sustainable methods, and the yachts that are currently in the construction with some of these modern technologies on board, is going to increase the focus on new build and not on refit. Until we're at a stage, maybe in 10 years' time, perhaps before, where some of those technologies are transferable, but converting existing vessels as it stands with the technologies at the moment is just going to be prohibitively expensive. It's not going to work.
So is that the reality, that retrofitting some of this next gen stuff is actually just far too expensive to even be practical for people of owners' wear?
I think that people can do it, but you know, merely throwing away, I think it's 95% of your carbon footprint is in the construction of the life, is in the construction of the vessel, not during usage. So throwing away your engines and then installing a new system, I'm not convinced that it would be particularly ecologically efficient at the moment. I mean, there are technologies coming into play with fuel alternatives using existing equipment, which, you know, we'll be following very closely. But with regards to class and tankage and how all of that's going to be done, we're definitely not quite there yet. And I think we'll need to see a few successful vessels and owners, because the message is driven, from the owners. So when a few high-profile owners start pushing some of these technologies, whether it's hydrogen or whatever, and then hydrogen starts appearing in Sardinia and Saint-Tropez and those places, then then it becomes more interesting for everyone else. But I don't think it's going to be led by refit at the moment.
You were brave enough to use the term ecologically. I think the onus on you guys must be tough. I think, because obviously we're all looking at the challenge of reducing footprints, and we're all looking at topics such as sustainability, which is a very loose term. And the big one, I think the big practical challenge is recycling old inventory in terms of the boats themselves. But I mean, the management of waste and the recycling process for you guys is sort of writ large in comparison to a lot of the commentary that comes from other sectors of the industry. Is that a challenge for you as a company, and are you sort of tackling it head on?
Yeah, I mean, we've invested heavily over the last few years alone in sustainability. We've increased our team from 2 to 6 people in 2-3 years. I mean, the treatment of waste and recycling of waste is always something that we've lived with, and we're just trying to improve all of the time. Definitely, we've got a new committee, and we've got people employed specifically to search for sustainable solutions, whether it's powering. I mean, we've got solar panels on one of our buildings, and whether we're going to do them on another building, and all of those things is definitely areas that we're looking into now. How much we can influence our clients' choices it is quite different. If a guy's got his whole deck covered with teak, we feel it's pretty difficult to try and persuade him to use an alternative product, because he wants his boat as it was built. And that's a common theme across most of the things we're doing. I mean, we do the occasional change where we can propose something ourselves, but mainly it's as per the existing style or as per the existing materials.
And is there any scope within the sort of bigger projects to sort of work with some of the excess, some of the waste materials, repurposing, recycling, reimagining? Not necessarily even from a yachting point of view, but there's talk of repurposing raw materials and putting them to use again, because there is obviously so much excess in terms of that material wastage when things are being stripped down.
Yeah, I mean, we're not doing a huge amount of removing existing parts of the yacht. I mean, I guess sort of exceptions are an interior change, where you might remove reasonably large sections of the interior. When it's woods on older boats, it's reasonably straightforward from that point of view. The more modern materials, IMO boats with aluminium honeycomb cores and these kind of things, it becomes more difficult. We are addressing those issues on a case-by-case basis, because as a boat comes in, we try and find out what it is, what it contains, what we're removing, and how we can deal with it and how we can process it.
So I mentioned at the beginning that you're obviously the laid back exterior, but underneath that, I know you used to be one of a vehement industry activist, and you're always contributing to the greater good, and there are a number of working groups that you've sort of played an active role in over the years. Is there any sort of particular area of focus that you're sort of involved with at the moment?
Well, we're through the Icomia Super Yacht Group and quite heavily involved in this. We're about to issue a new version of the contract, which should come out in the coming month, which will be good. But it's evolution rather than revolution there. But the other side that we're looking at now is the insurance side, which has obviously become a hot topic, no pun intended, but the increasing premiums, whether they're whole policy or shipyard policy, is an issue, and we need to look at ourselves and try and standardize across the market. A little bit like the refit contract at the moment, when we're doing individual project assessments, it's with a form called the JH143, which was developed by the whole committee, the underwriters, and it was designed and built for commercial shipping and didn't really have anything to do with shipyards or even yacht yards. I mean, if you go to somewhere like Palma or STP, there's 50 yachts, and clearly, if you read the JH143 form, it never considered that kind of situation. There might be 10 ships near each other in Singapore, but that's pretty exceptional. And it's an important thing to do, is to increase the customization of the insurance assessments of the shipyard to each shipyard, and there is a large variance between the different shipyards in the standards, equipment, the teams doing the health and safety in each yard.
And do you think the client side of that are just aware of that, of the sort of spectrum of risk?
I think the clients are feeling it in their premiums, and certainly it's happening that sometimes vessels are being asked for excesses for going into shipyards now, which was not the case a few years ago. So it's definitely a subject that interests clients, definitely.
So finally, Rob, just as you know, the sort of overarching theme of this is to look towards the future and the sort of state of the market. So what are your thoughts more broadly, I guess, for both the refit sector, but also the super yacht industry as a whole, as we sort of come out of the pandemic and look to the future?
I mean, it feels extremely positive. Maybe it's a little bit early to say, but I do believe in I'm a passionate boat owner, and I like being on the sea, and I get it, and I wonder why more people don't want to be on the sea. And I think I read the other day somewhere that the number of applications for boat licenses in Japan increased by 20% last year. And I think that's happening everywhere, and people are becoming, as a result of COVID, more interested in life on board a boat, or no matter what size. And I feel positive that the whole industry is going to feel the benefit of that. On top of that, as we mentioned earlier, with the drives towards more sustainable solutions to make the idea of buying super yachts slightly less I don't want to slightly more ecologically palatable, I think, and to get away from this sort of extreme capitalist view on the purchase of the yacht. That I think that can only bode well for the future of yacht ownership.
Yeah, I completely agree. Rob, thank you very much for your time. It's really nice to catch up. It's been been good to chat. Thanks very much.
No problem, Will. Good to see you again anytime.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.